The Sea Peoples are one of the most enigmatic groups in ancient history, known primarily for their role in the collapse of major Bronze Age civilizations in the Eastern Mediterranean. Their origin, identity, and motivations have been the subject of intense debate among historians and archaeologists for over a century. Emerging seemingly out of nowhere during the Late Bronze Age, circa 1276–1178 BCE, they wreaked havoc on powerful states such as Egypt, the Hittite Empire, and the Mycenaean kingdoms. Despite their significant impact, the Sea Peoples remain largely mysterious, their identity pieced together through Egyptian records, inscriptions, and archaeological evidence. Their appearance marked the beginning of a tumultuous era that reshaped the political landscape of the ancient world. The historical context, the Late Bronze Age collapse. The Sea Peoples are most closely associated with the Late Bronze Age collapse, a period of widespread societal collapse around 1200 BCE. Several powerful empires and kingdoms that had flourished for centuries experienced sudden and catastrophic decline during this time, including the Mycenaeans of Greece, the Hittites in Anatolia, and the New Kingdom of Egypt. The causes of this collapse are still debated, but appear to include a complex combination of factors: economic instability, climate change, natural disasters, internal revolts, and invasions by foreign groups like the Sea Peoples. The Late Bronze Age world was a web of interconnected civilizations linked by trade, diplomacy, and war. Major empires like Egypt, the Hittites, and the Mycenaeans dominated this landscape, with their power extending across the Mediterranean through naval forces and alliances. The sudden disintegration of these states left a vacuum that allowed for the rise of smaller, previously marginalized cultures and tribes, such as the Philistines and Israelites. The arrival of the Sea Peoples played a key role in destabilizing the region, though not the sole cause of the collapse. Their incursions were a major factor that weakened these already strained civilizations. Their attacks disrupted trade, destroyed cities, and led to the displacement of populations. The Sea Peoples arrived in waves, taking advantage of the chaos to settle in new areas and challenge the dominance of established powers. Their impact was particularly profound in Egypt and the Levant, but their reach extended throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. The identification and origins of the Sea Peoples. The term Sea Peoples is a modern one, used to describe a confederation of seafaring groups that appear in ancient Egyptian records. These records, particularly from the reigns of pharaohs Meneptah and Ramesses III, provide the most detailed descriptions of the Sea Peoples' raids and invasions. Inscriptions at Medinet Habu, the mortuary temple of Ramesses III, offer crucial insights into the composition of these groups and their actions. The Egyptians referred to these groups by several names, and the Medinet Habu inscriptions list the most prominent of these: the Peleset, Djeka, Shekelesh, Denyen, Shurdan, Teresh, Ekwesh, and Weshesh. Scholars have spent decades trying to trace the origins of these groups with varying levels of certainty. Peleset, often identified with the Philistines, a people who later settled along the southern coast of Canaan, particularly in cities like Gaza and Ashkelon. Many scholars suggest that the Peleset may have originated from the Aegean or Western Anatolia, possibly related to the Mycenaean Greeks. Djeka, this group is thought to have come from the region around Troy or Cyprus. They later settled in the coastal regions of the Levant. Shekelesh, likely originating from Sicily or the central Mediterranean, the Shekelesh may have migrated eastward during the Bronze Age collapse. Denyen, some scholars associate this group with the Danaoi of Greek mythology, suggesting an Aegean or Eastern Mediterranean origin. They may have been part of the broader Mycenaean world. Shurdan, the Shurdan, are often linked to Sardinia, where later cultures show similarities in weaponry and fortifications to those described in Egyptian records. Teresh, possibly connected to the Etruscans, the Teresh may have come from the region around the Tyrrhenian Sea, eventually settling in Italy. Ekwesh, the Ekwesh, are believed to be connected to the Achaeans, a group of early Greeks who are frequently mentioned in Homeric epics. They may have been involved in the Trojan War. Weshesh, the least understood of the Sea Peoples, the Weshesh might have originated in Anatolia or the Aegean. While the precise homeland of these groups remains debated, it is clear that they were displaced or mobilized by a combination of internal factors, for example, drought, famine, and external pressures, for example, wars, migrations. Many scholars argue that the movement of these peoples was part of a broader phenomenon of population shifts throughout the Mediterranean at the end of the Bronze Age. The Egyptian campaigns against the Sea Peoples. Egypt's encounters with the Sea Peoples are some of the best documented events involving these enigmatic groups. The first significant clash occurred during the reign of Pharaoh Meneptah in 1208 BCE. According to Meneptah's inscriptions, a coalition of Libyan tribes reinforced by Sea Peoples attempted to invade the western Nile Delta. Meneptah's forces decisively defeated them, and his victory stele lists several of the Sea Peoples by name, including the Ekwesh, Teresh, Lukka, Shekelesh, and Shurden. However, the most famous and significant conflict involving the Sea Peoples occurred under Ramesses III, one of Egypt's last great pharaohs. Around 1178 BCE, a coalition of Sea Peoples launched a massive invasion, targeting both Egypt's coastal regions and its land borders. The Sea Peoples arrived with their families, livestock, and chariots, indicating that they were not just raiders but migrants seeking new territory. The Egyptians, forewarned by previous invasions, prepared for the assault with a combination of military strategies. Ramesses III employed ambush tactics and defensive fortifications, and his well-trained archers played a decisive role in repelling the invaders. The climactic battle took place in the Nile Delta, where the Egyptian navy engaged the Sea Peoples in a dramatic naval confrontation. Ramesses III's forces were victorious, capturing or killing many of the invaders. Those who survived were either incorporated into the Egyptian military as mercenaries or resettled in Egypt as laborers. This decisive victory marked the end of major Sea Peoples' invasions into Egypt, though their presence continued to influence the region for decades to come. The inscriptions at Medinet Habu not only celebrate the pharaoh's triumph but also serve as one of the most important historical records of the Sea Peoples. The impact of the Sea Peoples on the Eastern Mediterranean. The raids and invasions of the Sea Peoples had a profound impact on the Eastern Mediterranean, contributing to the widespread collapse of several Bronze Age civilizations. The Hittite Empire, once a dominant force in Anatolia and the Near East, fell apart around 1200 BCE, and many of its cities were destroyed or abandoned. The kingdom of Ugarit, a key trading hub in northern Syria, was sacked, and the city of Troy may have also suffered during this period of upheaval. In Greece, the Mycenaean civilization experienced a sharp decline. Several of its major palatial centers, including Pylos, Mycenae, and Tiryns, were destroyed or abandoned. The Greek world entered a dark age, a period of economic and cultural decline that would last for several centuries before the rise of the classical Greek city-states. In the Levant, the Sea Peoples contributed to the destabilization of the region. The Peliset, Philistines, settled along the southern coast of Canaan, where they established city-states such as Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ashdod. Their presence in the region played a significant role in shaping the geopolitics of the area, particularly their conflict with the emerging Israelite tribes. The Hebrew Bible contains several accounts of battles between the Philistines and the Israelites, with the Philistines often portrayed as formidable adversaries. The disruption caused by the Sea Peoples also had economic consequences. Trade routes were disrupted, and the loss of key cities and ports hindered commerce across the Mediterranean. The fall of the Hittites and the decline of the Mycenaeans created a power vacuum that allowed for the rise of new cultures and political entities, such as the Phoenicians, who would become the dominant traders and seafarers of the Iron Age. Theories and controversies, migration or invasion. One of the most contentious issues surrounding the Sea Peoples is whether they were primarily migrants fleeing environmental and social pressures, or aggressive raiders seeking to conquer new territories. The presence of women, children, and livestock in the Egyptian accounts suggests that at least some of the Sea Peoples were entire communities on the move, likely displaced by famine, drought, or other factors. Many scholars argue that the Sea Peoples were part of a broader phenomenon of migration and population movement during the Late Bronze Age. Evidence of widespread drought and famine in the Aegean and Anatolia during the 13th and 12th centuries BCE supports the idea that these groups were forced to leave their homelands in search of more fertile lands. This theory aligns with the collapse of several key Bronze Age centers, which would have contributed to the instability that allowed the Sea Peoples to thrive as raiders and migrants. Alternatively, some scholars propose that the Sea Peoples were less displaced migrants and more opportunistic raiders. According to this view, the Sea Peoples were not simply fleeing environmental disaster, but were taking advantage of the weakened state of the great empires during the late Bronze Age collapse. The Hittite Empire, the Mycenaean civilization, and Egypt were all struggling with internal and external crises, making them vulnerable targets. The Sea Peoples may have seen this instability as an opportunity to launch raids and invasions, plundering cities and disrupting trade routes in the process. The true nature of the Sea Peoples may lie somewhere between these two theories. There is evidence to suggest that their movement involved both elements of migration and invasion. Archaeological findings indicate that some groups were actively seeking new homelands, as evidenced by the presence of women, children, and livestock in their campaigns. At the same time, their highly coordinated and aggressive attacks suggest that many of these groups had military expertise and were more than capable of waging war against powerful states like Egypt. Another major debate concerns the extent to which the Sea Peoples were responsible for the broader collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations. While their raids and invasions undoubtedly contributed to the downfall of these states, it is unlikely that they were the sole cause. Environmental factors, such as drought and famine, as well as economic and political instability, likely played a significant role in the collapse of the Mycenaeans, Hittites, and other major powers. Legacy of the Sea Peoples. By the end of the 12th century BCE, the Sea Peoples had largely disappeared from the historical record. Some of their groups, such as the Philistines, settled permanently in new territories and became part of the local populations. The Philistines in particular left a lasting legacy in the southern Levant, where they established powerful city-states and became a dominant political force. They are frequently mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, often as adversaries of the Israelites, with stories like that of David and Goliath underscoring the Philistines' reputation as fierce warriors. Other groups, such as the Shurdan and Shekelesh, were likely absorbed into the cultures of Sardinia and Sicily, where later archaeological evidence points to their influence in local weaponry and fortifications. The Shurdan, in particular, may have given rise to the Nuragic civilization of Sardinia, which is known for its distinctive stone towers, or nuragas, that dot the island's landscape. Although the Sea Peoples disappeared from history as a cohesive force, their impact on the eastern Mediterranean was profound. The Bronze Age collapse created a power vacuum that allowed new cultures and civilizations to emerge. The Phoenicians, Israelites, and early Greeks rose in prominence during the Iron Age, shaping the course of Mediterranean history for centuries to come. The Sea Peoples, while destructive, helped to bring an end to the old order, allowing for new political and cultural entities to flourish in the aftermath. The broader cultural and political impact. The consequences of the Sea Peoples' invasions extended far beyond the immediate destruction of cities and empires. Their actions forced a reorganization of political and economic systems across the eastern Mediterranean. The collapse of trade networks, for example, had a ripple effect on societies that were heavily dependent on long-distance exchange for goods such as tin, copper, and luxury items. The disruption of these trade routes contributed to the economic decline of major Bronze Age powers and ushered in an era of localized economies that characterized the early Iron Age. In the realm of warfare, the Sea Peoples introduced new tactics and technologies that had lasting effects on military strategies in the region. The Egyptian reliefs depicting the naval battles against the Sea Peoples show them using advanced ships and weapons, suggesting that they were highly skilled mariners and warriors. Their use of large, fast ships equipped with ramming capabilities may have influenced later naval powers in the Mediterranean, including the Phoenicians and Greeks. The movement and resettlement of the Sea Peoples also had a lasting cultural impact. In areas where they settled, such as along the coast of Canaan, their influence is visible in the archaeological record, including in the construction of fortified cities and the development of new artistic styles. The Philistines, for instance, are known for their distinctive pottery, which reflects both Aegean and Levantine influences, illustrating the blend of cultures that resulted from the Sea Peoples' migrations. The mysterious disappearance of the Sea Peoples. By the time the Iron Age fully took hold in the eastern Mediterranean, the Sea Peoples had largely faded from the historical record. Several factors contributed to their disappearance. First, their lack of centralized leadership or cohesive political structure made it difficult for them to maintain a lasting empire. Unlike the Egyptians or Hittites, the Sea Peoples were not a unified nation, but rather a loose confederation of tribes and groups. This lack of unity may have contributed to their eventual assimilation into the local populations of the regions they invaded. Second, the Sea Peoples faced stiff resistance from the surviving powers of the Late Bronze Age. While they were able to topple some states, such as the Hittite Empire and several Mycenaean kingdoms, they were ultimately repelled by Egypt under Ramesses III. This defeat at the hands of the Egyptians marked a turning point for the Sea Peoples, as they were unable to sustain their momentum following this loss. Finally, the broader societal changes brought about by the collapse of the Bronze Age civilizations meant that the Sea Peoples no longer had the same opportunities for conquest and plunder. As new political entities like the Phoenicians and early Greeks began to rise, the Sea Peoples' influence waned and they gradually disappeared from the historical stage. Many of their descendants likely integrated into the local populations, contributing to the cultural and genetic makeup of the region's later civilizations. Conclusion: the enigmatic legacy of the Sea Peoples. The story of the Sea Peoples is one of mystery, intrigue, and transformation. Emerging from the shadows of history during one of the most tumultuous periods in the ancient Mediterranean, they left an indelible mark on the civilizations they encountered. Whether they were displaced migrants fleeing environmental catastrophe or opportunistic raiders seeking new lands to conquer, their impact on the Bronze Age world cannot be denied. Though their origins and motivations remain shrouded in uncertainty, the Sea Peoples were a catalyst for change. Their raids and invasions helped to bring about the collapse of some of the most powerful empires of the ancient world, including the Hittites and Mycenaeans, and their presence in the Levant reshaped the political landscape of the region for centuries to come. The emergence of new cultures, such as the Philistines and Phoenicians, is a direct result of the chaos and upheaval caused by the Sea Peoples. Today, the Sea Peoples continue to fascinate scholars and enthusiasts alike, their story a tantalizing glimpse into a pivotal moment in history. As new archaeological discoveries are made, and as scholars continue to piece together the fragments of their history, the Sea Peoples may yet reveal more secrets about their origins, their journey, and their ultimate fate. Despite their mysterious nature, the Sea Peoples stand as a testament to the resilience and adaptability of human societies during times of crisis and change. Their legacy, though veiled in mystery, is one of transformation, ushering in a new era in the ancient Mediterranean world. Thank you for spending time with us through Spookscope today. Feel free to share your knowledge and wisdom in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, my dear spooker, stay curious.